There is a moment researchers at Skinwalker Ranch will not easily forget. It did not happen out in the open desert, under the wide Utah sky where most of the strange sightings are reported. It happened underground, inside the mesa itself, in a space no camera crew had ever been allowed to see before. For a few seconds, nobody in that room said a word. Some accounts describe the silence as heavier than anything they had experienced on the ranch before, heavier than the lights in the sky, heavier than the strange sounds recorded near the tree line at night. This was not a moment of excitement. It was closer to the feeling of walking into a room and realizing, without anyone telling you, that something important had just happened there. Whatever was found inside that mesa did not just add another mystery to the ranch's long list of unexplained events. It changed the way the team understood the ground beneath their feet, the land they had studied for years, and the questions they thought they had already asked. We are not going to tell you what it was yet, not because we want to tease you, and not because the details are being hidden for effect. It is because understanding what it was means very little if you do not first understand why, months later, the people who found it still cannot fully explain it. That is the real question sitting at the center of this story. Not simply what was inside the mesa, but why, even now, with all their experience and all their equipment, no one on the team has been able to put it into words that make it make sense. Stay with us, because the answer to that question does not come quickly, and it should not. It builds slowly, the same way the real mystery of this ranch has always built, one careful piece at a time, until the full picture finally starts to take shape in front of you. What you are about to hear is not a rumor, and it is not exaggerated for effect. It is the account of a discovery that quietly reshaped how a team of experienced researchers understood the ground they had studied for years, and it starts long before the moment they stepped inside the mesa itself. To understand why this discovery hit the team so hard, you have to understand what the mesa has always meant to the people who study this land. Skinwalker Ranch has never been short of strange stories, lights that move without sound, structures that seem to appear and change without explanation, animals that behave in ways no rancher, no matter how experienced, has ever been able to fully account for. But even among researchers who have grown used to the unusual, the mesa has always stood apart from everything else on the property. According to those who have worked closest to it, instruments behave differently near the mesa than they do anywhere else on the ranch. Signals drift for no clear reason, readings spike, then vanish, leaving behind no trace of what caused them. Equipment that works perfectly fine everywhere else on the land suddenly becomes unreliable the moment it gets close to the mesa's base. Access to certain areas has been limited for years, not because of one dramatic event that made headlines, but because of a slow, quiet pattern that built up over time, one strange reading at a time, one unexplained anomaly at a time. No one on the team claims to know exactly why the mesa behaves this way. What they do agree on, without hesitation, is that it does, consistently, in ways that cannot be dismissed as equipment failure, human error, or simple coincidence. So when we say the recent discovery changed things, understand that it did not come out of nowhere. It came at the end of years of small, quiet warnings the team had been collecting long before they ever set foot inside the space where the real answer was waiting. Some researchers who joined the project years ago describe a slow shift in how they personally viewed the mesa, from a landmark worth studying to something they approached with real caution, almost the way you would approach a locked room in a house you had lived in your whole life without ever once looking inside. That caution was not born from fear alone. It came from years of watching instruments behave in ways that had no clean explanation, and from slowly accepting that some questions on this ranch simply did not resolve themselves the way ordinary questions do. That pattern is what eventually brought a research team back into the restricted zone inside the Mesa, this time with a plan to look deeper than they ever had before. The equipment used was more sensitive than anything used in earlier attempts, chosen specifically because past readings in this exact area had been inconsistent in ways nobody on the team could fully explain. The team moved carefully, the way people move when they have learned, through experience, not to assume they understand what they are dealing with. Every step into that space was documented. Every reading was logged the moment it appeared. Every decision, no matter how small, was made with a level of caution that reflected years of working on land that had never fully earned their trust. At first, the data looked ordinary. Rock density stayed within expected ranges. Moisture levels matched earlier surveys. Temperature readings showed nothing unusual. For a while, it seemed like this might be just another routine scan, another entry added to a long list of inconclusive results. Then, buried quietly in the numbers, something small stood out. It was not dramatic. It did not trigger alarms or cause anyone to raise their voice. It was subtle, almost easy to miss entirely, a slight irregularity in an area of the readout that should have been perfectly uniform. Most days, a reading like that gets noted in a log and quietly moved past, treated as background noise. This time, for reasons no one could fully articulate afterward, something told the team to look closer instead of moving on. That single decision, small and unremarkable as it seemed in the moment, was about to change everything that followed. Nobody on the team could have known it at the time, but the next few hours would end up being some of the most closely reviewed hours in the entire history of research conducted on this ranch. Every member present understood, without needing to say it out loud, that whatever came next would need to be handled with more care than almost anything they had documented before. Once the team turned their full attention and their equipment toward that irregular reading, things escalated quickly, faster than anyone had expected going into that day. What had looked like a minor anomaly on the first scan became something far harder to dismiss on the second. The readings were not simply inconsistent anymore, they were structured in a way that did not match any known pattern of natural rock formation the team had documented before. Whatever was creating this signal appeared to have shape. It had defined edges. It carried a kind of internal consistency, a repeating pattern, that made several people in that room stop what they were doing and look at each other before anyone found the words to say anything out loud. According to those present, the mood in the space shifted almost immediately, moving from routine focus to something closer to quiet alarm. This was no longer a standard scan being logged for later review. Someone on the team was heard saying, almost to themselves, that whatever this was, it did not behave like anything they had recorded before, not on the Mesa and not anywhere else across the entire ranch. There was no confirmed explanation yet. Only the growing uncomfortable certainty that something structured, something with real form, was sitting directly beneath the surface they were standing on. For a team that had spent years learning to expect the unexpected, this was still something different, something that made even the most seasoned members pause and reconsider everything they thought they already understood about this part of the ranch. One researcher later described the feeling as similar to reading a familiar sentence and suddenly noticing a word that had never been there before, unsettling not because it was strange, but because it had clearly always been there, waiting to be noticed. The team made the decision, together, to go further, to stop guessing from a careful distance and find out, directly and definitively, what was actually buried down there. It was a decision made quietly, without any of the drama you might expect from a moment like this, because everyone involved understood that whatever came next needed to be handled with patience, not excitement. Rushing, they knew from experience, was how important details got missed, and this was not a moment anyone wanted to look back on with regret. What they eventually uncovered inside the Mesa was not what anyone on that team expected, and to this day, no one involved has been able to fully explain it in a way that satisfies every question it raised. Positioned within the rock, in a location that made no obvious geological sense to anyone examining it, was a formation unlike anything previously documented anywhere on the ranch. Its shape was too regular, too consistent, to be explained away as an accident of erosion or natural pressure over time. Yet it was also too deeply embedded in the surrounding rock to have been placed there recently by human hands. The condition of the material surrounding it suggested that whatever this was had been sitting in that exact position for a very long time, undisturbed, hidden completely from every earlier scan the team had ever run in that area. Researchers examined it slowly and carefully, aware from the start that any conclusion they reached would eventually need to hold up under real scrutiny, from colleagues, from skeptics, and from their own doubts. What struck them most, according to those present, was not just the object itself, but its exact placement within the mesa. It sat directly in a part of the structure that instruments had flagged as unusual for years, almost as if every earlier warning had been quietly pointing toward this exact spot the entire time, waiting to be understood. There was no dramatic reaction in the room, no shouting, no immediate panic. Just a slow, heavy realization settling over everyone present, the understanding that they had found something real, something undeniable, and that finding it only opened harder, deeper questions than the ones they had started the investigation with. Photographs were taken from every possible angle. Measurements were repeated more than once, just to be certain nothing had been misread the first time. And through all of it, the same quiet question kept returning to everyone in that space. How long had this been here, waiting, without anyone knowing? Years of surveys had passed over this exact location without flagging anything unusual, which raised an uncomfortable point of its own, that something this significant could sit undetected for so long, directly beneath ground the team believed they already understood. In the days that followed the discovery, the team worked carefully through every reasonable explanation they could think of, testing each one against the evidence in front of them. Could this simply be a natural rock formation, shaped slowly over time by pressure and erosion into something that only appeared deliberate? Some researchers argued yes, at least at first, wanting a straightforward answer that would let the investigation move forward without further complication. But closer analysis made that explanation increasingly difficult to defend. The internal structure did not match any known pattern of natural formation in that specific type of rock, no matter how the data was interpreted. Could it instead be something left behind by earlier human activity on this land, decades or perhaps even centuries earlier? That theory held for a while longer, until researchers carefully considered both the depth and the precise position of the formation, both of which made a simple human origin difficult to support without significantly more evidence than they currently had in hand. One by one, the easier, more comfortable answers were tested against the facts, and one by one they fell short in some specific and undeniable way. This was never a case of the team refusing to consider ordinary explanations out of stubbornness. If anything, they wanted one. A clear, ordinary answer would have closed the case cleanly and let everyone involved move on with confidence. Instead, even the most experienced members of the team, people who had spent years studying every corner of this land, found themselves without a clear answer, and that lingering uncertainty proved far harder to sit with than any single strange reading had ever been before. In private conversations after the fact, more than one researcher admitted they had expected this process to end with relief, with a name for what they had found. Instead, it ended with a longer list of questions than the one they had started with. That list, several of them noted afterward, was not a failure of the investigation. It was simply an honest reflection of how little any of them truly understood about what they had just found. With the simpler, more comfortable explanations effectively ruled out, the team had to consider a possibility that connected this discovery to something much larger, something none of them were fully comfortable saying out loud when it was first raised. Skinwalker Ranch has a long, well-documented history of activity that defies easy explanation. Unexplained lights in the night sky, structures that appear and vanish, behavior in animals that trained researchers still cannot fully account for after years of study. Some on the team began to quietly wonder whether this discovery was not an isolated event at all, but instead one piece of a much older, much larger pattern, one that may have been building slowly beneath the surface for as long as the ranch itself had been studied by outsiders. This idea was raised carefully and deliberately, framed as a genuine possibility rather than a confirmed conclusion, because no one on the team wanted to overstate something they did not yet fully understand or could not yet prove. Still, once the connection was suggested out loud in that room, it became very difficult for anyone present to simply unsee it. If this discovery truly was part of something ongoing, then the Mesa was not simply hiding one isolated secret. It may have been sitting directly on top of something that had quietly shaped the ranch's entire strange history all along, from the very first reported sighting. That thought settled slowly over the team, and according to those who were there, it did not leave any of them for a long time afterward. Some described it as the kind of thought that follows you home, one that sits quietly in the back of your mind long after you have left the site, resurfacing in quiet moments when you least expect it. For a team trained to rely on evidence and careful reasoning, sitting with a possibility this large, without proof either way, was its own kind of difficult experience. In the weeks that followed the discovery, the focus inside the research team gradually shifted away from what exactly had been found and toward what it might mean going forward for their ongoing work. This was never treated internally as a final conclusion, but rather as a genuine turning point in how the ranch was understood. Researchers began quietly reconsidering years of earlier data through this new lens, wondering seriously how many past readings, once dismissed casually as background noise or simple equipment error, might actually connect back in some way to what had been sitting patiently inside the Mesa all along. New plans were carefully made to study the site further, this time with a much clearer sense of what to look for and, just as importantly, what questions actually mattered most going forward. There was a noticeable shift in how the team talked about the Mesa after this discovery became known internally. It was no longer treated as just another strange landmark on an already strange piece of land. It had become something closer to a genuine starting point, a place where years of scattered, disconnected mystery finally had something solid and real to connect back to. Nobody on the team claimed to have solved the ranch's larger, ongoing mystery. If anything, the opposite felt true to most of them. But for the first time in a long while, the team quietly felt they were finally looking in the right direction, even if the full picture was still far from complete. That shift in direction, small as it may sound, is often how real progress happens in a place like this, not through one dramatic breakthrough, but through a slow, steady realignment of where to look next. For the first time in the ranch's long research history, the team felt they had something specific to build on, rather than another scattered event to simply record and file away. So, we come back, finally, to the question this video opened with. Not simply what was found inside the Mesa, but why, even now, months later, no one involved has been able to fully explain it. The team has a discovery. They have careful data, detailed analysis, and a growing sense of how it may connect to years of strange, documented history on this land. What they do not have, despite everything they have gathered, is a clear, fully confirmed answer that satisfies every question it raised. Some on the team believe the truth is still buried deeper than anyone has managed to reach so far. Others believe the full answer is sitting right in front of them, waiting patiently for the right piece of evidence to finally make everything click into place. Whether true or not, one thing remains clear to everyone who has followed this closely. The Mesa gave up one secret. It has not given up all of them, and until it does, Skinwalker Ranch remains exactly what it has always been, a place that reveals just enough to keep the questions coming, and never quite enough to let anyone studying it truly rest. If you have followed this ranch's story for any length of time, you already know this will not be the last discovery to come out of that Mesa. And when the next one arrives, we will be here to walk through it with you, one careful piece at a time. Until then, the Mesa keeps its silence, holding on to whatever else it has not yet decided to reveal.